Hello there, James True. Oh, whoops, forgot to do that. I forgot to do that. How's the light? This is one mode. If you guys think this is too Sunny D, let me know. Not enough Sunny D. Hello, all. I'm not muted. Let's get started. We got a lot to do today. We'll be talking about some PPs and some woo-woos and all kinds of stuff. Some of you probably not going to make it to the stream. You're probably like, I don't like where this is going. I don't like it. It wouldn't be the first time. Let's see if you make it. Let's see if you make it. Oh John, oh Masha. Oh John, oh Masha. Deuteronomy 7:3-4, neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. Now, not only did they do a lot of like thou shalt, one of the cool things about Jewish tradition is that they, using the oracle mythology, something we talk about here a lot, welcome to James True Live, they are using that to understand that there's a matriarchal component to their genes. I don't know how they knew that. Some of you are like, it's a secret time capsule, and they made a pact with a certain individual who shall remain nameless, and that pact involve them creating Hollywood, and you've got this great story. Seriously, it's like amazing. It also could just be the Oracle mythology. It could just be that if you listen to yourself, you think you stretch, you find that you can kind of figure things out. This is one of those. In sexual reproduction, the mitochondria are inherited from the mother. Mammalian mitochondria in sperm is destroyed by the egg cell upon fertilization. Mitochondria are only in the sperm's tail. This is another interesting factor in that even the sperm itself understands its own desecration. Sperm's like, I'm going for it. And it passes the cherub and gates. It squiggles its way through the holy waters into the Garden of Eden, and its serpent opens its mouth, and the apple comes out, and it drops into the basket that is getting laid. And all phosphorus light takes place. There's a zinc burst that literally happens. And more importantly, that zinc burst stimulates that the cherubim that are waiting at the gate are now holding a flaming sword, meaning that if any other sperm is heading into the vicinity of this garden, they are told, stay back, young sperm. For this garden hath done been ploweth already. Find another garden to ploweth. And so the sperm not only understands that it's going to push all its mitochondria into the back because she's just going to kill it anyway, but that this oracle of mythology somehow has been beckoning through time, telling certain people, hey man, make sure you keep this in the... Keep the family jewels in the purse, in the lady's purse. And this is particularly fascinating, especially as we get into to what we're about to discuss. Mitochondrial DNA, you can read about this if you want, but it's basically, we discussed this yesterday. It's so remember the prokaryotic is the homeless person, and the eukaryotic has a house. And if you have a house, you're going to move couches. You're going to find a couch on the street, and you're going to bring the couch home, and that's an organelle. And inside of that, there's going to be some DNA. Hey, a lot of things happen on the couch. That's why the couch is actually on the side of the road. I learned this young when I was like, oh my God, I'm so brilliant. I'm finding free couches. And then you start to like do some splatter analysis, and you start to back engineer probably what happened on this couch, and then you're just sort of like, this is not a free couch. This couch has deep implications, and I should really think about this. You really should. There's a lot to this. We discussed this before. A lot of things you can get used from the Goodwill. You don't want to get underwear used. You don't want to get shoes used. Believe it or not, you don't want to get hats used. A lot of you guys are like, oh, I could buy a hat. You can, but you'll find that if that hat's been worn a lot, it's impossible. You're a ghost, man. You're living inside of someone else's salty shell. And that salty shell is, yeah. Anyway, let's get back to it. The one thing I want, in addition to that couch, is the same mother couch that's always been there. The mitochondria inside the mother is going to stay with her through every birth. Doesn't matter what kind of guy comes in. And it gives you this primordial mitochondrial Eve, which we're about to talk about. But I felt like that you guys were so patient letting me get through the genetics and the virus stuff yesterday. I don't want to pull you too deep into this, but we could do like a whole show on the mitochondrial Eve. Maybe we'll do that sometime. But for right now, I want you to look at this. According to one opinion, Jewish descent was patrilineal before the giving of the Torah, and only since then has been matrilineal. I think that this is going to come to grips as we carry along here. First of all, you have been reciting this mantra for 200,000 years, about 10 trillion times, multiplied by as many times as the cell lives. Some cells live for days, some live forever. So it's a big number. And that you could picture You probably know this. Probably actually know this code. And when you stare at the code, with the exception of the white letters that I have in front of it, I think that there is a limbic reaction to this, a kind of recognition that takes place on a very deep level that you may not recognize. How many of you have done that thing where, like some of the letters are numbers, right? Like, so every I is a 1, and then every E is a 3, right? And that they say, hey, if you can read this meme, you're a genius, And so anyone who wants to feel like a genius is going to read the meme. And anyone who wants to feel that they're not a genius is going to somehow find a way to fail a meme. This is how creative we are. And that when you start to utilize your oracle mythology, I think that you would be able to start to literally detect a vibration from the letters that I'm showing you on the screen. That there's a hum and a mantra. Some of you guys probably listen to Tool. You know that the Fibonacci sequence is basically just a really long ass fucking song, man. Like a really long. And if you just follow the math has a very clear path, a very clear journey for you. And the mitochondrial has the same. This code is so essential that, like I say, every cell demands that it remembers this. It keeps its own copy. It doesn't even allow, think about how much storage we could save if instead of this one file being stored in every single cell, if we just had a pointer. That if you could just like look to the sun or something, that you would have a pointer. And you can't. You can't because of this matrilineal connection. You need 2 keys inside of your cell to find source. One source, remember we talked about yesterday, the viral load. 8% of you is viral. Welcome to James True. Happy to see all you viruses here. Or some of you who don't like the word virus and you haven't watched yesterday's stream yet, the prolific protein shell formerly known as virus. That 8% of you is a prolific protein shell formerly known as virus. And that 40% of you are jumping genes. You're jumping genes. You're corduroys. You're a lava melting through rock, remember? And so in order for you to download source, this is a theory of James True, your DNA is your Wi-Fi code. You tap into a Wi-Fi signal of source, and that having that code inside of you allows you to transmute that code in real time and decode it. And because you have a certain code, it's already customized. It's got your Netflix, it's got your history, it's got your favorites. All those things are kind of saved in place because you have this certain key. And I'm suggesting that you actually have 2 keys, and the other one is this mitochondrial code. That you as a mammalian, utilizing the Homo sapien Wi-Fi key, you're going to be able to access certain source information from Gaia herself that does not require you, the individual, necessarily to establish it on your own. And so this is just a transfer bridge. It's a wormhole that you would tap into inside of your cell. The eukaryotic nature of you is living inside of a house, and inside that house, you've set up a mirror, and that mirror is connected to this mitochondrial network. And so you have plants, you have fish tank, you have all of the things that you would find outside in the world, outside of your nucleus, you're able to bring into your inside too, and actually have a pointer to it. It's a reference is what it is if you're into programming. As we discussed last time, the Y chromosome is suspiciously handy for customization. That the SRY, this little guy right here, only has 27 chromosomes versus the 1,000 instructions that are inside its neighbor, and that it has these preferential binds. It preferentially binds fluorescent dyes, which basically means it's super easy to find and see and to turn it on or off. And that it's stacked with all these fertility preferences, height, virility. So many things are actually kind of conveniently placed here. And that this switch is not even necessary in order for you to be a boy or a girl. This is an extra switch that isn't even necessary. The only reason why it seems to have a purpose is if you want to invoke the SRY early, if you want to tell the emerging zygote that it is a male right away, you're going to add this SRY gene. You're going to flip it on or off, basically. So it's safe to say, if you want to consider what I think you should consider, that this, although we're not the only one that has this specialized Y gene, that a lot of the creatures that we seem to have this DNA sequence with, it seems, and that control panel is turning you male or female on purpose from a very young age, instantly, from the time you're in a zygote. One of the confusions that happens a lot, that I'm going to say this as quick as I can, you are actually a gender before you know you're a gender, but the gender that you are is actually not a singular thing. I'm not trying to get weird on you, but when you form your blastocyst, your cells decide, I want to be on the outside and I want to be on the inside. And that city that you build, this nebulous egg that has an inside and an outside, that's the very first expression of gender, that the cells inside of the blastocyst, the pre-zygote, had to make a decision. This is the Titans, the Greek mythology of the Titans, believe it or not. And Athena is split out of the head of Zeus. And every time you chop off someone's arm, just another body part falls out. And that this is just a living manifestation of meiosis, not mitosis, the splitting of the cells before it's a blastocyst. And so it's shown in the daughter cell. The daughter cell herself is ripped apart. She doesn't have a child. Half of her body is ripped apart and another cell is formed. That's just called meiosis. When mitosis kicks in, you've already defined an interior wall and an exterior wall. And technically, those are gender. Now, as you prepubescently grow, your entire organism is expressing a male-female characteristic right away, before it has to, before it needs to, specifically because you have this SRY gene. It's very much kind of looking up going, somebody doing that on purpose? Is it why do I have a switch inside of me? And it's very interesting, especially when we start to invoke this oracle of mythology, and just reread the Bible. So as I just mentioned, there's a lot of scenarios where we don't even understand why the SR gene is even there, why it's necessary, why it's important. There's a lot of different advantages that certain creatures have if they don't know their sex right. Believe it or not, the community itself can inform the gelfling, the youngling, because it's going to depend on if it's a plant or an animal or whatever. But even heat, things like location, things like the amount of population surrounding something, all those can inform gender, except for us. We have this special switch, and like I said before, it's prepubescently activated. It's hard to maybe argue it's prepubescent because we probably want to just think this is natural. But when you start to look at corn, guys, there's nothing natural about corn. I love corn, and I have a beef with natural, but here's what I mean. Corn has been genetically modified a lot longer since we've been here, a lot longer. And so it's safe to say that the DNA inside that maize has already been genetically altered like 50,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, probably by us. We probably had some crazy stuff going down. It was not the best apocalypse ever. It was probably like, this is not such a good apocalypse ever. Oh, it was probably like that. And it took us a while to get better and better at having these apocalypses, at surviving a cataclysmic winter and popping up out of the ground again. If you missed my Tower of Babel stuff that I started last week, this is actually all related to that. It's just there's so much good information along the way that we're spreading it out. So this this SRY gene seems suspicious to me. I didn't get a chance to really show you this, but with the playing around with that, you can actually turn that switch on or off or modify it. And you end up with a rat that has testes and ovaries. That both sets of gonads, the male gonads and the female gonads, are expressed and fully operational. And you might say, well, that's genetic Frankenstein. It's like, yeah, it is. So's corn. So's corn. So's the SRY gene. It really is. It really is. So let's get to it. So first of all, there's actually 9, but let's ignore that. 7 major glands in the adult endocrine system. If anyone wants to prune my lips, I've left out the one that goes away once you enter into adolescence. That's why I said adult. But that we are 7 endocrines high. We have a pineal gland, we have a hypothalamus, we have a pituitary gland, we have a thyroid gland, we have adrenal glands, we have a pancreas, and we have gonads. Those are 7 different chakras, 7 different zones. Now, next to this on the slide, if you're listening to a podcast, thanks for listening, is the Vitruvian Adam. This is the drawing by Da Vinci, and it's called the Vitruvian Adam because he was actually just taking notes on the work of Vitruvius. Vitruvius had written a parable to beauty, and in this parable, he had outlined what the perfect stature was for all things, whether it be architecturally, whether it be in society, whether it be even the shape of man himself. And Vitruvius said that the perfect man is 8 heads high. He's 8 heads high. And Da Vinci played with that ratio and drew this sketch, which I know that you've seen before. It's this double. One man is inside of a circle, another man is inside of a square. Now, taking the oracle mythology, which we talk about a lot, if you're new to me, you're going to have to kind of put an asterisk by, okay, what the fuck is that? But if you take the mode of oracle mythology, one of the reasons why we find this picture so beautiful is because Da Vinci was tapping into the oracle and we see it. And what I see when I look at this is the chimeric Adam Kadmon, the original Adam. This is not a James True thing. This is some of the dankest, oldest religious texts you're going to find describes this. And when I revisited those texts and looked at Vitruvian Adam, it struck me pretty profoundly that this is what we're looking at here. And when we start to look at how Noah works and how you unpack a civilization, this 7 heads versus 8 heads I think is important, because if you had 2 sets of gonads, if you had the gonads of male and the gonads of female, you would actually have 8 endocrine systems here. You would have ovaries and you would have testicles. If you place on an ark, I'm talking about a Torah ark where you store your Torah on the wall or in your hutch at home, and that ark has Yahweh written on it, but when you open the ark and look at those letters inside out, it actually says he, she. The name of God, when it is open, is the pronouns he, she. I talked to you last week about that which I am, or the pronouns that and I, and that God clearly has a dual gender, if you want to use 2 in the sense of that there's 2 genders. It gets really funky as I'm about to show you, but I need you to know there's a stream called The Secret Name of God you can look at that goes into this. Additionally, my book, Ark of Baphomet, if you want all this in a book, starting from last week all the way to now, you're going to find a lot of this stuff and more inside my book, Ark of Baphomet. This is actually the cover. It'd be great if you want to check that out. There's links in the description. I swear I'm getting back to it. But this 8 heads high, I think, is a huge clue, because it's taking us back to this primal Adam. Before we get there, I need you to know, a lot of people use the word mutation, like that's just a genetic mutation. And they might say that if you're a hermaphrodite, it's just a genetic mutation. I need you to know that there's a lot of dogma about what a genetic mutation is. And that these are all things that we used to think were genetic mutations, but they actually don't have the right numbers to verify that. For example, there's a lot of creatures that have gigantism, that if you isolate them in a certain environment, they grow very large, but that we have a dogma that that could never happen to man. Additionally, it's a very, very common, when I say very common, I mean it's much more common than what we would call a genetic mutation for some people to have an extra rib, a cervical rib. And this cervical rib is always in the same place, and that this same place is probably accommodating for what used to be a much larger head, a much larger skull, that you would need these cervical ribs. We see the same thing on, cover your ears, some of you, but we see the same thing on dinosaurs, and that larger structure is necessary. It's not necessarily mutation. It almost seems to be a footprint, a genetic footprint. Post-polydactylism is the idea of having 6 fingers or 6 toes. This was always considered a mutation, but again, it happens too frequently for it to be a mutation. It actually is a feature. And it seems to be that feature is more based on just how large we are. And so over time, the 6 finger would change to 5 finger. Additionally to that, the condition that is formally known as Down syndrome, I think we should call it trisomy 21, is this dual double gene at number 21. The 21st gene has 3, not 2. We call that a mutation because we see people with Down syndrome and we think because they're not like us that this must be a horrible thing. And I'll frankly tell you that it's certainly impossible to imagine how a Down syndrome person could survive in this world by themselves, but that does not necessarily call or mean it's a mutation. It very well could be that society has gotten so voluptuous that it is capable of expressing more of its code, and that one of the ways that it would have that is it would create these little berries of highly empathic people that rely on the rest of society to survive, and that what they see and what they feel are seen as shamanistic energy that we would insert. I don't think we have that right now with Down syndrome people, but it's because all of these things are considered mutations, and that actually scientifically is not even the right word. Mutations happen on a much more micro scale, and even those we can really look at. I think it's better to accurately to say, I wonder why it did that. I wonder why it did that. And so is Rh negative blood a genetic mutation? I think, Oswald, I think I just answered that. I'm not saying that you didn't hear me. I'm just saying that you're looking at a too substantial of a number to call that. I think the Rh negative has more to do with the backwards winding that we talked about yesterday. Remember the sinister windings that we discussed? I think it has more to do with that. With that said, right in the face, James True is making you look at genitals. Oh my God, make it stop. This is an anatomy drawing from 1796, and it is hermaphrodite. We don't draw this stuff. We don't express this stuff like we used to. And this is a real thing. It's not a made-up thing. It's just simply been expressed as this must be a mutation. When two fertilized eggs or young embryos of opposite sexes fuse to develop into one baby, the baby mammal, which comes as a gonad of both sexes, is referred to as a true hermaphrodite. This is real stuff, people. Real stuff. Let's let that sink in. All right? Let's just let that sink in.
The attempt to end my husband's life was a horrible, distressing experience.
Thank you for watching James True.
The silence around it feels heavy. I can't help but wonder, why didn't law enforcement officials arrest the shooter before the speech? There is definitely more to this story, and we need to uncover the truth. The attempt to end my husband's life was a horrible, distressing experience. Now, the silence around it is heavy. I can't help but wonder, why didn't law enforcement officials arrest the shooter before the speech?
problem whatsoever, and we hope to keep it that way.
Oh, I'm muted. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I just said some really cool things about, I hope you're enjoying the show. This is a show within a show. It's sort of like the show within a show that tells you that the outer show is a show too. But both of those things are shows inside of your show, and that's show business, and that's what we're doing right now. Sorry about the technical difficulty here, but all that to say, we're back. We're talking about hoo-hoos and woo-woos and hermaphrodites. I just told you that hermaphrodite is actually a pretty standard thing, and that some of you are probably like, oh, but this is just game. It's the LGBTQ F564 is 9420 blah blah blah. And you're just like, yeah. I've been there too, man. I spent a lot of time on that island. I was just like, let's kill some LGBTQ straw man. And we were just like waiting for the straw man. We're just like, kabam! Oh, look at that straw man. Oh, kabam! You got blue hair, kabam! You know, and it was, you know, that's what we did to cope with COVID. While they were closing down the country, while they were looking at the country, you and I were shooting tranny straw men. And I'm kind of embarrassed by that. This is how you learn. I have a butt crack. And that butt crack helps me grow. It's my sail. It leads me to shores where I understand things more. And what I'm trying to tell you guys is, and by the way, if you want to keep shooting blue hair straw man, they want to be seen. So you're helping them. They want to be seen. But with all that said, this is not new. Hermaphroditus is all over Greek and Roman culture. The two-sex child of Aphrodite and Hermes, Venus and Mercury, had long been a symbol of androgyny and was portrayed in Greco-Roman art as a female figure with male genitals. And this happened with Uranus. Some of you will call him as Kronos, that is salty ball sack. God bless him. The salty ball sack spilled, and out from that came Aphrodite, and it was Hermes, the horned Venus. Hermes is a horned Venus. And that was the union of Hermes with Aphrodite that made the hermaphroditus. So Hermes is a horned Venus. And this horn means horned Venus, guys. Horned Venus. How else do I say this? Follow my mouse. Horned Venus. Okay, horned Venus. Some of you guys like to play cornhole. I just want you to change the word. Hornhole Venus. What is this? Hornhole Venus. Okay, you with me so far? Remember? Remember, this is both. All the time, baby. You're climaxing yourself all the time. This is a whole new level of consciousness. It seriously is. And this is not new. This was saturated all over. This is not James True porn. This is just, you go to Greece, take some pictures, take them back. These are all horned Venuses. People in the podcast, these are Greek statues, most of them marble, and they're just portraying different horned Venuses in different fashions. And this is where I think we'll part ways with some of you, and it's okay. Many of you are really want there to be two genders, and I'm cool with it. I don't actually mind. I just want the rest of us to be able to just know kind of like what's up. And sadly, if you want to learn genes, you're not going to be able to say there's two. You're just not. You can say that there are two poles, and that those poles express themselves purely as male and purely as female, and that's fine. But there's another pole. There's another pole. It's a hermaphroditic pole and an androgyne pole. And that's your Y. There's an XY axis here, guys. And it really does. See, I just said guys. And it really is horned Venus size. Yeah, you can't even say that because most of you guys aren't that way. This is really the more accurate way of looking at the first man. I think right now that our culture is inside of a male-female paradigm because that's the vibration that works, and that vibration is necessary to proliferate a species. And I think that once enough people gather into a city like Rome, like Greece, like San Francisco, that something in the soil changes that polarity and it starts to go vertical. And by going vertical, it's actually this. I know you guys have to know this, that when pigs are inside the same living conditions and they're too tight, they clean themselves out. They 70% of them die. And that they do that the same way that we have electrical vibrations called yellow fever, called Spanish flu. And that the reason why those pandemics hit, the pox itself, for example, hit the big cities so much is because the vibration, the smell of the opacity of humanity starts to realize I need to pinch this off. I need to separate and slow down my fertility vibration. And you do that in a couple of ways. The hermaphrodite is full on because it's selfing. You're going to be able to self yourself. Like oh God, I just intimidated myself. Boom. No date, no arguments, no hope chest. What the fuck is a hope chest? No ring, no nothing. No, can I get your approval? None of that, right? Whoever made us said, hey, you know what? Why don't we make these fuckers have to like convince someone else that they're worthy of reproduction? And that's what we did. That's what we did. So now you're here and you can self yourself, but it doesn't do any good, right? Some of you are like, I've never touched myself. I know, except for you. If you try that, then it's not going to work. But it used to work. Not only did it used to work, the patriarchs in the Bible are telling us about that. And I probably need to get jumping to tell you about it. But this is so important because if you want to understand what's going on right now, I think it's this, guys. I think that we are moving into a different vibration. And that vibration really is based on how many people we have. So just hear me out, okay? There are 4 modes in nature. And I didn't actually say gender. There are 4 modes in nature. And that mode would be in a way of expressing yourself into the world. And that some of those modes actually are hermaphrodite and androgyne. Just because we don't see a lot does not mean it's not natural. That's a fallacy. That's never actually proved to be accurate to say that. So there are 4 sexes, 4 paradigms of sex in the Vitruvian man. And here's what I want you to think about what gender is. If you look at the taxonomy of identity that I've got here, at our base, we are eukaryotic. Remember, we talked about that. We all have homes, so that's our domain. We are of the kingdom Animalia because we animize our world. That's why I'm going to say it. We're of the phylum Chordata because we understand music. Again, that's not why. We are of the class Mammalia because we love boobies. Again, that's not why. We are of the order Primaias, and I don't know what that means. And we have the family Hominidae, and then we have the genus Homo, then we have the species Sapien. And this is a brilliant way. There's nothing at all wrong with clarifying this, but that there's one more level on top. And that level on top is actually you. When you get a name, when you instantiate yourself at birth, you declare yourself a living species. Hear me out. You are no longer Homo sapiens sapien. You are John Jacob Jingleheimer fucking Schmidt. And that is its own classification, but we do not have a classification for the individual yet. We do not have that, but you do. And what I think we're watching happening is that species is literally building itself its own framework off of the tree, the entire tree of life. I think it's called the poly species. It's the entire tree of life is making room for another nugget, and that nugget is your personal identity, your I am. And that I am would only exist if it developed its own karyotic ego. its own place where it holds things like, here's my name, here's my social security number, here's my IP address. And that all those things are expressing this very nature. Which means that when you're watching people have a war over gender, they're actually more trying to pull this tulip out beneath its sheath. The sheath of male-female, of male-female, male-female is a paradigm that's crucially important during a fertility mode where we got to fucking get it on and make kids. It's an honorable mode, and it's just as honorable to enter into a place where that paradigm maybe isn't going to do the best good. And that the emergence of that, it would look like Elvis. It would take a long time. And that when Elvis came out and started moving his pelvis, he was spinning the dance, he was spinning the whirling dervish, and undocking your muladhara to do more than just have sex. You are now a creative being. And so sex itself became a kind of paint. And through Boy George and all the other stuff that we've endured, we've watched this tulip come out of its sheath, because that tulip is the 8th chakra, and it's the I am. It's who you are. You don't have to call it a chakra. Don't worry. No, come back. It's not a chakra. It's not a chakra. It's just it's a gland. It's a fucking gland. It's as bland as a gland. And that extra gland is a mode, and that you and I are learning the difference between sex and mode. We are learning the difference between sex and mode. Therefore, your identity, your I am, is the instantiation of a new species, and that new species no longer has a fertility-based centralized component to it. And that has been unrolled through a very, very long history since we rolled out of the ark. The zygote is in the middle between male and female. The zygote is the first cells of man, or of you, I should say. So let's remember this. Aphrodite is a female. And when you give the Aphrodite a horn, she becomes Hermes. Venus is a female, and when you give her a horn, she becomes Mercury. Mercury is the horned Venus. Hermes is the horned Aphrodite. These are the same thing. The hermaphrodite is Mercury, the deliverer of message, the deliverer of medicine. The one who talks from God to you is a hermaphrodite. And this is part of this ark story. A lot of people had horns. You see this all over the place. Moses, Alexander, Noah. And that I believe these horns were the same nod to that hermaphroditic. Being king of your own fertility would be a pretty big deal. And you're remembering a time back then where you had pre-fertility. Everything before Pan, no fertility. None. This is why Pan's the sex god. This is also why Pan dies, the only god that dies. It's because he had to die because fertility and mortality are the same. These are the central elements that come in. So if you want to reproduce yourself, you're going to have sex. This is why the Bible's like, we need sex giants, more sex giants. We need a boatload of sex giants. That's literally what Noah said. He's like, I'm building a boat, going to put a bunch of sex giants on it, going to go to a new land. We're going to harvest the freshest white virgins we ever signed. Then we're going to pluck them. We're going to pluck them. We're going to stick appendages inside their holes and do things that we've never done before. And it's the 4 unlawful carnal knowledge is literally, it's unknown knowledge that was never there before. It wasn't necessarily look how perverted we are. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. What have we done here? It's a mosh pit of horniness. All these things prove what I mean. Let's get started. The hermaphrodite at the very top would be the Adam Kadmon. I'm just calling him Aedom because it's the Eden, Adam, and Eve combined. And at the very first start of this, there is a singular Adam. And Adam and Eve are actually the same. And it's confusing because the text just tries to simplify it for you. But if you're ever looking into esoteric things, you'll see things like hidden Adam, which is Adam Kadmon, or the hidden Adam, which is Adam Cassia, or the Hawa Cassia, the hidden Eve, or the Adam Pagria, the bodily Adam. And you've probably even heard of Lilith. And this is all these things right here, guys. When Eve splits from Adam, Adam selfs himself. Yeah, Adam diddles himself in the garden. There's cameras. Out of that springs the Adam and Eve. But Eve has to shed her Lilith in order to become female. Adam has to shed his Abel in order to become Adam. I'm stretching with Abel here, but it's the same thing. These concepts are in our mythology because there is a separation, and that separation is being transcoded for you, but you have to pay attention. Noah, the son of Adam, was still a hermaphrodite, but you're about to see he was on a male. Whoops. Oh, come on. Why are you not working? That's not good. Oh, my keyboard's not working. Wait a minute. Give me a second. The Noah is closer to male, and we're going to find out next time. We're going to do the entire show is going to be nothing but Noah and Ham, and I've all this is kind of the prerequisite to that. But you'll see how all this ties together. As I said last time, The Apocalypse of Adam is a book discovered at Nag Hammadi, and it does talk about what I just told you, that the Yaldabaoth became angry and divided them into two aeons, meaning that he applied heat. And through the separation of the heat, he took the sides of both and created this mortal version of this. The Strong's Hebrew, the true definition of male and female are piercer and womb created he them. One who pierces and one whose wombs. And that the very heart of what sex is was actually added. It was a translation applied to us. This same information is all over India in Ardhanarishvara. Ardhanarishvara expresses this exact same concept. It's just a little bit more clear because she has the right side of her body is male, the left side of her body is female. And another version, which I think really shows this more than anything, is how colossally important the placenta was. That in Egypt, the placenta was the Lilith. It was the spirit. It actually was Horus, but I'm just trying to keep us on track. The placenta was kept because people saw the placenta as being your brother or your sister. And when you're born, the Horus, this is why Horus is always on the horizon. The concept of him always being on the horizon is because you never meet your Horus, because for you to be born, your Horus dies. So the eye in the sky is on the other side of life looking at you. And that as you move through life, you reference your Horus, your Holy Spirit. This is the true origination of this term. The blessed child that died gave his life so that you could come live. That story of Jesus is actually the Horus, but that Horus is actually tied to the placenta. I'm showing you a picture of the oldest mascara makeup kit we've ever found. This is the Narmer palette. This guy on the left here is Narmer. And on his shield, it's showing his procession. And in that procession, the holy placenta is carried. The person carrying the placenta bearer here on the bottom is the only person who's not allowed to have any facial hair. Every single piece of hair is shaved because it represents the young Horus, the baby Jesus, the one who gave his life so that you could live. This is all straight from this Kadmonic conceptual idea of Adam stepping down into these things and shedding these parts. As I said yesterday, a side of Adam is not a rib. It actually is just a side, which means the entire face. And I think more importantly, Adam is not used as a proper name until Genesis 4:1. That if you look at the Hebrew, it's actually not considered a proper name. It's more of like a noun. And that it's only until Genesis 4:1 that Adam actually becomes instantiated as a man. Remember that word, instantiated as a... what did I just do? Sorry, I am having some trouble clicking here. Remember how I told you about the abstantiation, that you get abstantiated when you develop your name. And so too is when Genesis 4:1 comes. I'm trying to get there. When Genesis 4:1 come, you are instantiated. He's instantiated for the first time, which is why he gains a last name. It's going to be any second now. Okay, and that's Genesis 4:1, which is right here. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. Did you hear that? She said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. This is the first conception. This is the first conception through not selfing. That what makes this special is that the fertility has been instantiated. The nudity, the attraction of the sexes has been installed and invoked, and it's working. But it has problems in the beginning. And to verify this more, Eve is mentioned as a he so many times. In Genesis 2:2-3, if you read this Bible, you won't catch it. But if you look at the Hebrew, it's right there. And Hebrew scholars will even say the Hebrew phrase, and it's listed here, literally translates as he will be called out woman. Meaning that when Eve is made, Eve is referred to as he. And it says either the he is an error or should be she. And it would be an error if we were thinking in our fertility regular way that we do things now. And so this is another clue. This is inside of Genesis 2:2-3. You can check that out yourself. Look it up on Strong's, and it'll show you that. Another situation where Eve is listed as he is in Genesis 3:12. The man said, the woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it. But actually, the she is a he. The American English corrected that. King James corrected that. The Latin corrected that. But the original actually didn't say that. Rebecca is actually a boy. She's referred to as a boy and the boy in several different ways. And if you're looking at the horn Venus, that would still fit. A horn Venus would be satisfied as a boy. It would depend on their mode that they're operating under. When you go to Egypt, remember the story? Go to Egypt and tell them you're my sister, man, because if they find out that you're not my sister, they will kill me. Now, we're told that's because you're beautiful, because Rebecca's beautiful, or Sarah's beautiful. It's Rebecca. It's one of those. One of the that his wife is beautiful, and that word beautiful could have actually just meant if they find out you're a hermaphrodite, we are fucked. If they find out that you are of holy lineage, that you are a horn Venus, something will happen to me. And that's probably a better interpretation of what that says. So Rebecca here, when the time came for Rebecca to give birth, the first child to come out emerged was red and hairy all over. So it had this sort of giant-like thing. And additionally, the second child, remember she had twins, and the second child was called heel catcher. And he was considered to be a problem. He wasn't nearly as perfect as the first. Heel catcher is the Achilles. And that in primordial man, the giants did not have the Achilles heel. We just look at the archaeology that Neanderthal did not have this ability to run. Not only were their feet flat, but they lacked the Achilles tendon, which gives you spring. Having that spring and having a lot more pores in our skin and having a displaced skull gives us the ability to run. And so the whole advantage of the Achilles weakness is that the giant himself has a weakness because he does not have an Achilles. And so you're able to kill him by shooting him in the Achilles. You see how that works? This is the oracle mythology. It's all right here. The patriarchs, so many things that are I think, big clues about this genetic. First of all, Sarah was barren. So was Rebecca. So was and Rachel, and that all these women were barren until God did something like an IVF, an intravenous fertilization, or they self themselves. That the early patriarchs, the reason why they were called barren is because it was barren in the fertility sense, that I tried to have sex with this other hermaphrodite and it didn't take. but I became pregnant later because I self myself. They're here to teach carnal knowledge. They're here to install sex as a way of reproducing. They don't have to do that, but they're doing that because it's in their genes. The Noah gene is telling them, dude, this new crop, it needs fertility, and you have to unwind it. Sarah was able to give birth to Isaac at the age of 90 through divine intervention. Sounds like IVF to me. Abraham described Sarah as both his wife and his half-sister. It's, again, another clue that something's going on here. The Midrash, when Sarah was 100, she was described as being pretty as 20 years old. When she was 20, she was seen as 7 years old. This is that virgin that's there to take the new seed. That she's a template there to output giant code, and that the giant code is slowly sinking down that hermaphroditic scale I told you about and entering into that plane of male-female. Rebecca, similar story. In fact, when Rebecca is veiled and seeing Isaac, this is her new husband, such a spiritually exalted man. Keep in mind, seeing Isaac such as a spiritually exalted man, if you watched my Ark of Baphomet Friday, you know that spiritually exalted man means Priapus. She saw Isaac in the field, spiritually exalted. She saw his masculinity. Rebecca immediately dismounted from her camel, asked the accompanying servant who he was. When she heard that this was her future husband, she modestly covered herself with a veil. There's two things here. First of all, covering the veil is hiding her horn because he's a man. And secondly, Isaac brought her into the tent of his deceased mother, Sarah, married her, and loved her. When she went into the tent, the same thing happened as did with Sarah. According to Rashi, the three miracles that characterized Sarah's tent while she was alive and that disappeared with her death reappeared when Rebecca entered the tent. They were, number one, a lamp burned in her tent for 7 days. That's one. Number two, there was a blessing in her dough. That's number two. Number three, a cloud hovered above her tent. These are all divine fertility. The having her yeast planted, right? Getting the flame, the eternal flame on for a week. It's showing you that there's something else happening here. There's something else. There's something happening here. Next time we are going to dive into every one of these things and show you the real funky story of Noah. Noah is a funky orgy that takes place with Ham in his tent. And I hope that this has gotten you in the right realm where when I just hit you with that tomorrow, it'll just be straight, oh my God, all this makes sense, and it'll hit. So thank you so much for watching James True. Hit that thumbs up. I really, a lot of people on the airship. That's really great to see. I appreciate you guys. If you're new, welcome to James True. This will be James True Live. This will be inside of a playlist that you might see. So if you want to catch up, you can do that. But otherwise, stay tuned. We'll see you next time. Try and self as the song plays if you want. Maybe one of you can do it. I don't know.